Okay. All right. John, thanks so much for taking the time to do this interview and participate in this in my little video series to cover the current events. When this whole thing started, actually, you were the first person I thought about. I need to speak to John because you've definitely have a lot of input and very relevant input because you're not only a musician, a performer, you also run Chant Records. So there's kind of a multiple kind of viewpoints on what's been going on right now. Now I know that you've had to deal with the situation from kind of almost the beginning because you were posting. I saw on Facebook you were posting that one of your children was had cases at their school, and so you had to deal with the quarantine from the start. So what's going on right now? How's your life at this moment?
I mean, at this point, it's okay. Thankfully, my family is healthy and safe, and my kids are okay, and my wife is okay, and my parents and in-laws are okay. I think like in many, many places, we have, people who were directly affected and have lost people and things like that. But yeah, it was kind of crazy at the beginning because I'm right near it seems like so long ago now, like every week seems like a month, but we are right near where the epicenter was at the very beginning. Because there was a guy around here who tested positive. He went to a bar mitzvah celebration at a synagogue on a Sunday in February. My son was there. One of my kids was there. And then they very quickly said, so he tested positive and his case was quite serious. I mean, thankfully he's recovering now, but it was not good. And so they said everybody who was there has to be quarantined. And that was like March 1st or 2nd or 3rd, something very beginning. And then also that day, my kid's school shut down. So I feel like what everybody is in now, we have just been in for a bit longer. And it was very surreal at the beginning because we were like quarantined. And then I would go on Facebook and see like people like birthday parties and holiday, like traveling. And I was like, I don't think it's just going to stop here. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember a Facebook post you posted one day where you said, "All right, this is my situation right now, and everybody needs to be aware that this is probably going to be everybody's situation soon." And now look at what's going on. I've been seeing pictures of friends have been showing me pictures of streets in New York with like almost no cars, no people.
Right.
So it's a really strange time. Are you now continue? I mean, is everybody around you in your family, is everything okay, or you're just now part of the lockdown and quarantine that's generally been applied to the city, but there's no threat or danger to you or your family right now, right?
No, not any more than to anybody else. I feel like what started, it didn't spread from here, but it's like
right,
seemed to have popped up in many pockets. And fortunately New York, the whole state, and especially in the city where I'm like a half hour outside of New York City, is like the epicenter, I guess, in the US now. But I feel like where we've been for a while now, everybody is there.
Can you give me a little bit of a status update on what's going on with the music scene right now, especially since you've got these many viewpoints to talk about? What's the current situation from your end as a performer, as a musician, and as a record label owner?
Yeah. I mean, I think the general word is it's obviously the more a musician depends on live performance or any kind of live teaching, anything like that, the worse off they are, I think. I've certainly, in the first days I heard from many of my friends, I was talking to them or texting with them, or talking to Shanir, my partner at Chant Records, musicians in my band Zion 80, they were just like lost all their gigs immediately.
Right.
And I don't think, and I do, from what I can tell, musicians are like, they've lost gigs like through September, because I think, and it's understandable, venues and festivals, they probably at this point would rather cancel than have it be question and then maybe be on the hook for something if they get closer to the date or whatever. You know, everybody's in a tough situation, but musicians and anybody. I mean, you know, we've had conversations about like being freelancers and things like that.
Right.
My wife is essentially a freelancer. She's a therapist, and her, you know, while theoretically people have been like needing therapy more because it's a very difficult situation and there's a lot of stresses, there's also like people are losing income and they don't want to spend it on going to the therapist. So overall, but you know, but it's like there's always the other side of it where I see musicians being very resourceful and upping their game as far as like technology and doing online lessons and doing online concerts and things like that. Hopefully that can make up for some of it, you know. But somebody who's built I was talking to a woman recently, like her whole career is built on like tours and performance. You can't just switch like that.
Right.
You know?
And it's a very volatile situation in the sense that you don't know, even after the kind of all of these measures are maybe relaxed a little bit, you don't know what the status is going to be with traveling. And I've been talking to a friend of mine who's also a musician, said there's this concern of, okay, so when will we be able, because a lot of people are touring, you know, outside of like New York or outside of the United States, and they have, you know, relevant audiences in other countries, other continents. And so it's the idea of when, you know, when will this start again? When will we be able to travel? How do you see it, like from your perspective right now? What do you think, with your experience in music, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to the music industry going forward?
Like long term?
Yeah.
It's so hard to tell because I think we're still in the period where like, as far as like musicians and like people are relying on maybe savings that they have, or like it's still a transitional period, I feel like, into some new reality. And I don't know, I mean, as far as like getting back to normal, I mean, I hope that before too long we will be back to be able to have our normal course of work, you know, in the whole world. But I'm not sure. It seems so, like you said, volatile and like changing every day. You know, I hope that the musicians in my community are able to like make it through this one way or another, either by like relying on savings, being resourceful, you know, whatever.
Right. Yeah, because
beyond that, I don't know.
This is also the music scene that you're a part of, which is also the music scene that I'm covering, and you know, what I'm writing about a lot is especially kind of, you know, dependent on these gigs, because we're not. I actually saw a post on Facebook today, posted by Shai Maestro, the pianist. He said that he's finally reached one of his life's goals of having the same amount of dates as Beyonce. So, you know, try to see the positive of it. You know,
that's great. That's great.
But this is a community. It's a kind of a musical, you know, landscape that's especially, I think, affected by this. We were having that conversation a while ago that I plan to also revisit and post on my website, with your permission, that live video about serious music, because it's relevant to what we're talking about now, because it's this music scene that is art oriented, and you know, it's even more relying on the continued support of the community. So what can the community, what can listeners like myself and the fans of this music do to help support the artists right now, from your perspective?
I mean, in a very tangible way, I think, like, you know, buying music online from artists. Bandcamp a couple weeks ago did this, you know, promotion where they didn't take their percentage for a day. And Bandcamp is already a great website for independent music. I think it's probably the best platform for independent music of all kinds, including what I do and what you cover and what people in our community do. And it's a place for people who are really like, they want high res downloads and they want to support the musicians, and they might not be so enthralled with streaming, but that is one way. And we were able to, Chant Records did like a partnership with Rope-A-Dope Records, and we, in addition to the percentage that Bandcamp was offering, that they weren't taking. We encouraged people to donate more, and then we passed that money directly to artists. Now, for my label, it wasn't a ton of money, but there were a few artists who were able to probably make like a month's rent on, or I don't know in New York, but like, close to a month's rent, based on that. And that was great. And the more that happens, the better. So I do think that's one way, is to support artists. And funny enough, because one question, sorry, this was not your question, but it's related.
No, it's a conversation.
I've been trying to, I had the thought of like, oh, maybe, if musicians are out of work, maybe they'd be interested in like working on their business, practices.
Right, I was
like,
going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, like I felt like, oh, like a lot of musician friends of mine, I see what they're doing online, and they're not using platforms like Bandcamp to the full potential. There's a whole ecosystem there. So I thought maybe I could offer some help to them. So I partnered with the great organization called Asylum Arts, which is like a Jewish arts organization, but has a lot of reach in other places. And they were able to help me put together this workshop that we offered to help musicians learn a little bit about the business side, both as a way to make more income now, and also like, okay, you're at home with nothing to do. Maybe you're practicing your instrument more, but maybe you could also like figure out like how Twitter works and build your audience on there, or like build the website that you've always been planning to build. And I'm going to be doing more workshops like that.
You've done one already, right? As far as I remember, it was one.
Yeah, we did a 2-part. I did a 2-part that was kind of like a survey. Excuse me. Like, I kind of imagine myself like sitting with a group of musicians virtually and saying like, okay, here's what I think you all should be doing and paying attention to, just in general. So now I'm going to go more, into specifics. And hopefully, people will find it of value.
Right. It's good to, I know you've always had, that's one of the things where I thought you always excelled with Chant and with doing your work, but also as a musician and also as a label owner, you're always very connected, very community oriented. Chant with what you do online, what you post online. And I feel like that's really relevant right now in this moment, because I keep thinking, I think of Chant Records a lot and what's going on now, but I also think of Tzaddik and Zorn, who has been almost to a pathological degree closed off from, this kind of transparency and everything. And I'm thinking right now, okay, so I'm checking the Stone website. Everything is canceled up to, I think, September, as you said. Your residency in November still, I see, unaffected. It's there, so that's good. I was going to ask you about that. And so I was wondering a lot, and I wanted to get your perspective, because you were kind of a bit, because of your mindset already and because of the way you were running things, perhaps a bit more prepared to deal with something like this than, say, somebody like Zorn, who had this very kind of old school way of running Tzaddik and kind of closing it off. And so this I think it'd be very relevant to take an example from what you've done with Chant Records. So I think that's a really good thing, doing these workshops and for musicians, because I've talked recently to Daniel Bennett. You've seen the interview, and I was going to ask you about what you think about his thoughts, because he said he's a very positive guy, very optimistic guy. I love him a lot. I love his energy. I love his music. And from the beginning, from the start of this, Daniel was he said, okay, all right, we're going to use this. We're going to do this. Work as hard as you can. I've seen two opinions on this. One on not putting too much pressure on yourself or trying to overwork or overload in an effort to kind of compensate, and another in the way Daniel's doing it and saying, okay, see this as an opportunity. He says he sees this situation as a cultural renaissance. It's something he keeps saying in the articles. What's your opinion on that, or what are your thoughts on his view of this being maybe a positive change?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one, also just to get back what you were saying about like the different labels and stuff. I think everybody is doing things differently, and my wife has been saying like, what this brings out in people is everybody's the same as they were before, but more.
I love this.
So like I see it like just the small thing of like my kids who have been dealing with it really well. They're like getting into stupid little arguments over like the orange juice so much more. And the other day I was like, guys, just stop talking. And of course it didn't work. But it's that. So like, I feel like Daniel, who's already a positive person, is like going to see things that way.
Right.
As far as like how Zorn and Sadek are dealing with it, I don't know. I mean, certainly like in many ways, we wouldn't be able to have built Chant in the way that we did without him.
Right.
Without Jon. So like, I think he works in a different way, whether it's generationally or whatever, but like that sense of community is something that definitely has always been the most, one of the most inspiring things that I've gotten from Jon.
Oh, maybe I've expressed myself in the wrong way. I didn't mean that he's not community oriented or that Sadek. I meant more of a transparency type of thing. That's
it's transparency. It's also, and it's also like, the kind of things like the just a basic thing of like what kind of online presence the label has to begin with, which Sadek has less of. That's kind of part of its appeal. It's like this cool, whatever. So, but to get back to what you were saying, I think, yes, I agree with you. There's two sides to it. And I also think that, like if you're a glass, to go back to the cliche, if you're like the glass is half full type of person, you're going to see those opportunities now. And if the glass is half empty, then that's also what you're going to see. And neither of those are incorrect. It's a matter of the attitude that you have and partly that you choose to have. I mean, I'm sure like, I've said this many times to many people, like I've never been more thankful to have a day job than I am now. And we've had discussions based on that about like freelancing versus that, because I feel like my most valuable and limited resource is time right now.
Right.
But if I had a whole summer tour that was going to pay my rent for the next 6 months and it just got canceled, I certainly would not want to presuppose. I wouldn't want to like tell that musician to be like, just look on the bright side. Like, it's easy for me to say because I still have a roof over my head. Like, so there's two sides to it. And it can, you said like about beating yourself up and like putting all this pressure. I definitely understand that. That's definitely how my mind works. It's like, oh, you got to do this. It's like,
I'm the same way.
The situation is what it is, and somebody at the very beginning of this, somebody was like, sent me something to listen to, an album. And they were like, oh, you must have a lot of time on your hands now, so you can listen to, here's something to listen to. I was like, I have less time on my hands. I didn't have much before, and I have less time because my kids are home.
Right.
My day job, I work for like a media and news company. So like, they're just like on overdrive.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know who has time. I mean, so it's different for everybody.
Of course. And it's hitting people. There are different layers of the way that people are affected, from this isolation thing that I always talk to people. I feel privileged because I'm home with Yana, with my wife and my two dogs. And that makes a world of difference as opposed to people I talk to who are by themselves. It's already one thing. With the musicians, it's kind of the same thing because some maybe have been more prepared to deal with this than others, and that's to get back at the idea with Sadek. It wasn't necessarily a criticism of how Sadek runs things because that's its appeal to the great degree. It's kind of old school, but it also leaves them, I think, a bit more exposed in a situation like this. Whereas somebody who is already geared towards a lot of online activity and a lot of online presence would be perhaps a bit more prepared.
Yes, for sure.
How has this situation impacted you creatively on the projects that you've been doing? I wanted to do an interview with you for a while now, before this whole thing started again, because you were teasing on Facebook, working on more of an electronic project, and you had some more things going on. So how are these projects? Can you give me an update? What are you working on right now, and how was this impacted by what's going on?
Yeah, so there is that project. I haven't really put anything out yet because mostly because I'm working in Logic on on Mac, and I'm kind of like I have to learn the whole ecosystem and software, and but it's been an amazing kind of creative process for me, and I love it, and I'm like I could do it if I just had a month like no sleeping, sitting in my basement, I'd be just thrilled to do it because it's so endless. So I have been working with that, and in a way, like just because of everything going on, who knows? Like I find myself waking up and being more inspired to like, okay, I'm gonna find a half an hour today to work on that because it feels in a way more, like more necessary or more therapeutic, I guess maybe the word is, like for me, and I know that when I've been able to tap into that, the more that I can tap into that, the more relevant and meaningful the music will be to anyone else who might hear it. You know, I felt that over the years with Zion 80 and other projects. So yeah, I'm working on that as much as I can. And that again, it's like, it's a solo project. It was designed as a solo project. And I have a studio set up here in my house. And so that's great. And I'm able to do that. I was also, as this hit, I was just finishing, about to go into like the very final mixes with a project that I'm working on with Eden Pearlstein, who's a rapper and MC and poet. And we were very, we I shouldn't say, I'm not putting it in the past because it still exists, but it's this project that we've been working on for a while that we got into the studio and we're really happy with it. But I don't want to say too much about it, but it's like, it's very topical and kind of politically oriented, the words. And as soon as this hit, I talked to him and I was like, I just don't feel like, I think we need to pause just like thinking about this.
Right.
Because it just doesn't feel, and he agreed. So that is like, that's on pause, but very much we're looking for a way to do it. But there's another project that I've been working on with him and Basia Schechter, who the two of them are, they make up like the core of Darshan. And that was one of the first albums that Chant Records put out, in 2017. Basia is also the leader of Pharaoh's Daughter. So we're working on a project together.
She's been also on some of Zorn's projects. She's been in Mikale once, right?
Yes, and many other things. Yes, she's brilliant, and Eden is brilliant as well. And that project is more like, for lack of a better word, like meditative and spiritual. And I was like, when I talked to him, I was like, this like political, aggressive music, like that doesn't feel right now. But that song about like healing and love, like let's work on that, like not that I wouldn't have wanted to before, because I was already signed on to that project before. But it's like, that feels like I can, sit in my basement and add like a drone, No,
it makes sense. People have been telling me, like, because I write science fiction for a living, right? So everybody's kind of been joking around now. Oh, are you working on a like quarantine type dystopian, pandemic type of novel? I said that's the last thing I want to be working on right now. That's I wouldn't even be. First of all, if I were a reader, I wouldn't be reading that right now, just because maybe some. I mean, maybe people are different. Maybe some find a bit of comfort in this kind of. But for me right now, it's the last thing I would want to work on. Is something that's that deeply relevant with what's going on. But you're right. I've seen a lot of musicians go to and doing this kind of, like you said, the music with a healing message. And for some it works well. That's why I try to be, looking at the music industry the way it is now, I try to also see, be inspired by what Daniel's saying, but also I've been looking at other musicians. Now, of course, lots of people have been doing live gigs, through Facebook, through Instagram, but there's one musician in particular that I just saw recently, and I've been following a lot, is Carlos Chipa, who's a pianist from Munich, right? And he's, first of all, his style of music is really, he's got a very kind of meditative type of, very calming type of music and playing. But what he's done now is he was just in the middle of working on kind of trying to launch and release his new record. And he's been doing these live videos, but I really like the way he's done it to a degree that was so professional. It stunned me. Like the video quality, the audio, and it's in his living room, but just the audio quality is crisp. video. You feel like you're in a cinema, and it's just his performance is something you'd see on Mezzo. And what he's done is he's been playing his music, and like every week he plays one new track off the new album. And he's kind of been integrating this release of his new album with this home concert series. So he's really the one musician I've seen who's done this to perfection. I love him a lot. He's one of Jonas and my favorite musicians. I gave him the Music and Myth Awards last year for Rashanim. I think it's something you might enjoy if you check out Carlos.
Yeah. Wait, tell me his name one more time. I'm going to write it down.
It's Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
And Chipa, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is with a C. So it's CIPA.
Okay, I'm
and
gonna check it out.
Last album, Rashanim, is really a wonderful piece.
That's great. Thank you.
Music. So I think you might enjoy his work.
Yeah.
So I've been kind of, I've been happy to see somebody like Carlos introduce this into what he's doing, because it's working. It's not just him, playing music from his living room. He's doing something that's really relevant, very professional in sound and video. I don't know how he does it. He's like on his Steinway playing. It's really great quality. And he's introducing, preparing the tracks, and he's kind of releasing these tracks on Facebook Live. So that's, of course, it's going to take some time for us to see what will work, what doesn't work. But it's gonna take. I was just looking at my other screen because I used to work in IT support, right? So I'm always paranoid about things recording or not recording, and I thought I saw something moving there. I'm like, shit, I'm like a pilot in a plane now, making sure this doesn't crash. So what are some of your plans right now for Chant to deal with in the future? Do you have some, anything new in your activity with the label that's been influenced by this so far, or do you have plan to adapt anything?
That's a good question. I mean, for the most part, we're really kind of doubling down on what we were already doing, which is, finding great music to put out and working with artists to do that in the best way, and building the community. And that, definitely feels as relevant now as it ever did, if not more. I did a little thing in like an email newsletter where I had like two of our musicians, Ben Holmes and Curtis Hasselbring. They wrote little like diaries of what they were doing and how their lives were. This was a couple weeks ago now, so it seems old, but things like that. And we actually we were able to hire. I hope he doesn't mind me saying, Ben Holmes, who's a phenomenal trumpet player and composer, has also we hired him to work with us on Chant, like as a third person who's working on the business. And that's actually been really good, because we're able, we've needed to hire somebody for a while just to help us with the work, because there's so much work. And he, he's a musician, so he lost a lot of gigs. As far as that, honestly, I've just been trying to keep up with the normal business, and I find that the musicians are reaching out to me more and being like, what can I do to get the Bandcamp thing out there? Can you help me share? Like Brian Shankar Adler, who I know you've talked to, was doing like a series of like performances and classes, and he's really doing a lot online right now. And we are trying to help artists like him and others get the word out about what they're doing. As far as other things, it's hard. Like somebody reached out to me and said like, oh, we should do a compilation, but you have to weigh everything. And like you said, it's like, on the one hand, there might be a lot more opportunities now, but a lot has, come to a halt. Other opportunities may present themselves, but you still have to look at like, how much time do we have? What are our resources? I don't want to like half do anything, especially now. So in the conversations I've had with Shanir, it's been like, let's really keep doing what we're doing. Make sure, a lot of it, it's not like I was going to say the sexy part of running a label. I don't think there's any sexy part of running a label, but it's not like, which my wife would definitely agree with that, but she's like, oh, you're talking about that again? Okay. It's not the exciting part of running a label, but like a lot of our success, a lot of the successes that we've had have come from, of course, the music is deep, uncompromising, adventurous music like we've talked about. Yeah. But a lot of it is like preparing, and like if we got to get everything from the artist 2 months in advance to really get the word out and build it up, and that has a lot to do with how much it gets out there. So we're really trying to do our best to like excel at that, which is not the exciting part. I thought of like a Chant live stream festival and things like that.
I'd like that.
Yeah, me too. Which still may happen, but I want to make sure that it's done right.
Right.
And like we have a responsibility to our artists to like help them get their music out online now, especially.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that's completely solid and taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, you were actually mentioning, because I was thinking about that too. I was supposed to talk to Ben Holmes. I was supposed to interview him, and I was talking to his agent too. And in the midst of all of this, I said, "Yeah, let's go forward." But he never got back to me. His agent never got back to me because, of course, with everything that's going on. But but I know that Naked Lore is supposed to come out sometime mid-April, right? And it's a really
April
great
24th,
record.
Yeah.
Really great record. I loved it a lot.
And I can also, I can put you directly in touch with Ben if you want. I'm sure he'd love it.
I'm in touch with him on Facebook. I'm just we're Facebook friends, and I just wanted, for me, it's been a kind of similar thing, because I'm trying to see with the music and myth, what can I do right now that's relevant, to this moment, also to the musicians and the community I'm looking at. That's why I haven't posted any reviews. I haven't done traditional interviews. I'm doing these video conversations that I think could be relevant, mostly this time not necessarily for listeners, but for other musicians themselves, because you're talking to people.
Totally.
So I was trying to figure out what to do, and that brings me to another question: what can I do? What can somebody like me do with what I have with the music and myth? Is there anything beyond writing about it, covering, putting out the interviews? What can something like a music website, the way that mine functions, what can I do to help in this moment?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's this. I think it's, you're already doing it. You're responding to what's happening. You're serving the community. I mean, your website, I've been a huge fan of the website for a long time, and finding out about new music on it, because like many of our artists are like, oh man, this website is amazing, and and many people have said, like, not only like is it so great for our community, but like you find out about new music that you didn't know about, which is what which is like, I feel like that's our role at Chant also. If you're a fan of like Brian Marsala, check out like Beats by Balto or whatever other artist. I feel like it's already, you're already doing it, I feel like. Okay. And getting the word out and sharing your love of the music and your talent for writing and speaking and sharing ideas with, I feel like it's, it's totally, it's great. And it's so important and valuable now.
I'm happy that, if that, because, to me, it's also been you've been in Chant Records, and you yourself have probably been the biggest supporter of what I'm doing, and a big influence in the way I've been developing the website.
Thank you.
And that's why I was thinking, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do these interviews now as, from a video format, because we're in a time where I feel like there's a lot more resonance, to people hearing and seeing people talk about these things, rather than even if it's just because I'm a writer, I love to write, but I thought that this would be a good idea to do this in a conversational format, just because of the mindset it might put people into. So what have you been doing on, I'm not going to keep you for much longer, because I know you've got to be somewhere and you got your day job, right? So
a few minutes, right? And I don't hear my kids running around upstairs, so they're still
all right. Then one quick question to wrap this up. What have you been doing on a personal level? What kind of music have you been listening to? What's gotten you through this, just personally, from Jon Madof, the person?
That's a good question, but I did realize. Like, I'm a fan of all different kinds of music, and my kind of like the music that I kind of came to much later than most people is metal, and I'm a huge fan of like so much metal, and in fact the last live show that I went with Chenier was Mr. Bungle.
Cool.
In Brooklyn, which was like unbelievable. And in fact, this is a non sequitur, but my wife and I have been watching the new season of Ozark. which is such a good show on Netflix. And this hopefully isn't giving away, but spoiler alert if people haven't watched the whole third season yet, but there's a scene where there's like somebody basically is being tortured by listening to metal. Like, you know how they do that sometimes? They'll like blast you. Like, it is a form of torture actually to have like loud music, but I just remember thinking, I mean, it was last night we were watching it and I was like, oh, that's like, I could listen to that, you know, but like the starvation would take, you know, I wouldn't like that, but like the blasting of like, you know, Cannibal Corpse, like I could, you know, I could deal with that. But I have definitely found myself gravitating towards like way more calm, meditative music. So like I'm a Spotify fan, which I know puts me at odds with a lot of independent musicians, but I've decided to be like full disclosure on that because I think there are a lot of great things about it. And like, yes, it's huge and evil and it rips musicians off 100%. That's a whole other discussion, but I do listen to it all day. And I just find myself going through like the ECM catalog, like very much now, you know? So a lot of that stuff I've been going through Bill Laswell's output on Bandcamp, which is like, that's a whole like universe in and of itself. I'm going to check out this guy that you just recommended because that sounds like right up my alley. Yeah, definitely more like calm, meditative stuff. I have found that like when I'm doing my day job work, there's like some sort of an arc of the music that I want to listen to. Mm-hmm. And before I was like in this routine of like in the morning, I would often listen to like, I love this vocal trio on ECM. I'm not pronouncing it right, but Trio Medieval. It's these three singers.
Oh, okay.
I think
yeah. Mm-hmm.
They do some kind of like early, like Hildegard von Bingen is one of my all-time favorite, you know, composers, whatever. She was, I think, 12th or 13th century. Zorn turned me onto her. Her music is like out of this world. So I would listen to that or like Bach or something. And then by the end of the day, I'm like listening to Napalm Death, you know? And like, until you said it, I didn't even realize it, but like, I literally have not listened to like metal or like extreme, or like if I'll put on Zorn, I'll put on like The Gift or Alhambra love songs, and I won't listen to like Moonchild or like even Naked City, you know, like I'm like, okay, enough already. I'm getting that in when I go upstairs and deal with all the stress, like, you know, so yeah, so it's almost like cliche, but like, you know, and it's without even thinking. It's like, you know, I'll put on my like Discover Weekly and like some heavy music comes on and I'm like, next. I don't want to.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way. I've been listening to a lot of calming stuff because, you know, I put on Naked City, I feel very energized, and then it's like all dressed up and no place to go. Because, you know, then I feel like doing something, you know, going out, doing something. It's that kind of thing, probably.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
All right, John. I'm gonna let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'll edit the interview. I'll put it on. I'll send you the link when it's done, when it's live.
Yeah,
and looking forward to speaking with you again. Looking forward to following what you're doing, and you know, I eat as much as I can. If you ever think about anything else, or if anything crosses your mind that I could do or that my website could do to, you know, kind of further adapt or you know, push the situation forward for the community, please let me know. And
I will, and likewise, and thank you, you know, really thank you for everything that you're doing. It's huge.
Likewise, man. And in the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, and all my love to your family. And
likewise.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, thanks, Andre.